We have breaking news. In the disappearance of a teenage girl out of South Carolina, Mackenzie Dalton has been found and she's safe, according to the sheriff, and an 18-year-old man is in custody. I'm Angenette Levy, and this is Crime Fix. Mackenzie Dalton hasn't been home since November. The sheriff's office said she ran away from home, taking a car and a suitcase with her. Mackenzie is just 16, and the sheriff's office said they'd been working to find her since that time. But something changed over the last few days. On January 2nd, the sheriff posted on Facebook asking for help finding Mackenzie, posting a photo of her and calling her an endangered runaway. And the sheriff said he believed that Mackenzie was traveling with a man that she knew and that they had recovered her suitcase and the car that she took from her home when she left. Then earlier today, the sheriff announced that Mackenzie Dalton had been found safe and an 18-year-old man, ironically also named Mackenzie, had been taken into custody. His name is Mackenzie Keith English, and he's charged with obstruction of justice, accused of lying to investigators about being with Mackenzie Dalton and knowing where she was located. The sheriff said he has no reason to believe that Mackenzie was being held against her will or with someone she didn't want to be with. So I want to bring in Matt Mangino. He's a former prosecutor and currently a defense attorney. Matt, this is a really interesting case, and I think that there are a lot more questions right now than there are answers. The first question I have is, if Mackenzie left in November from her home, she's 16 years old, why is the sheriff waiting until January 2nd of 2026 to seek help from the public if they considered her an endangered runaway?
That's an interesting question, Angenette. And obviously, we know, at least from the facts that we've heard, that she voluntarily left her home. She ran away. She left with a bag. She took a car. I would assume that there had to be some suspicion of where she might be and who she might be with, because she knew this person, and the sheriff said that she wasn't with somebody that she didn't know or was afraid of or didn't want to be with. So, this period of time between the end of November until the beginning of January, and why all of a sudden, just in the last few days, it's become a matter of urgency, is really interesting, because quite frankly, having an intimate relationship between an 18-year-old and a 16-year-old isn't a crime. And running away from home, well, it's a status crime because of her age, really isn't something that's under the crimes code as well.
That's the interesting part of this. And what triggers the endangered runaway part of this, in my mind, potentially, this is where my mind goes, is the fact that maybe they find the car in the suitcase. Is that a possibility? And they think to themselves, oh my gosh, we don't know where this girl is, but the car in the suitcase, we know where they are.
That may well be, and that's an excellent observation, because it changes the circumstances. Because initially we know she drove away, she packed her bags, and now all of a sudden that dynamic changed because they found the car and they found the suitcase. So all of a sudden, authorities are not so sure that she's in a place that she wants to be or with somebody that she wants to be. And that may have heightened, their concern and the family's concern because of that change in circumstances.
It's still very curious, though, to wait that long to seek help from the public if you believe there's an endangered runaway. She's still a teenage girl, a 16-year-old, and they can't find her. So do you find that unusual, unless she had a history possibly of running away?
Well, there's a lot of factors that we don't know at this point that law enforcement may be privy to. But, the other side of the coin here is that, these are two young people. The law in South Carolina is clear. They call it, in fact, the Romeo and Juliet law, that a 16-year-old and an 18-year-old, can have consensual sex. They can have a relationship. And this may be a very close relationship between the two Mackenzies in this situation. But there are other factors here, and I feel for the family as much as anybody. I mean, this is a family with a 16-year-old daughter who basically doesn't know where she is for 6 weeks. Yes, that's I couldn't imagine the impact on that family of a 16-year-old who runs away and family has no contact for 6 weeks.
Yeah, if you're a parent, having your kids out of your sight for any period of time can be terrifying. 6 weeks and you can't get a hold of your child. We don't know if they had any communication. It would be unusual that a 16-year-old girl or a 16-year-old these days would not have a cell phone or any type of device to communicate with anybody with or using. But, so I find that unusual that maybe she didn't have a cell phone, a tablet, something like that she could use to communicate with someone with. And what I also find unusual, Matt, is the fact that Mackenzie, at least the teenage girl Mackenzie, she doesn't have a social media presence.
Yeah, that's unusual for a 16-year-old. Unfortunately, in the age that we live in, that's unusual for a 10-year-old, quite frankly. I mean, everybody has a presence, it seems, on social media and whatever platform you decide you want to participate in. The other thing is that maybe in this situation, this relationship soured. So they run off together, and this is going to be the greatest thing that ever happened in our lives. And now, you're in the real world. How are you supporting yourself? What are you doing? What's going on in your life? And maybe the relationship sours. Maybe there was some contact with the family. Hey, I got to get out of this. I made a mistake. And that heightened the awareness of authorities. We don't know right now. We're speculating about that.
Sure, we certainly are. We're asking a lot of questions because we don't have a lot of answers at this point. And you mentioned, the two Mackenzies. I do want to point out, I reached out to the Lexington County Sheriff's Office, which is the agency investigating this case. They are the ones who took this Mackenzie Keith English into custody. And I asked that question, is there more to the story? Why do they have the same first name? And the spokesperson, the public information officer, told me at this point it just appears to be a wild coincidence. But we'll wait and see what develops as this case continues. At this point in time, Matt, depending on what comes of this investigation, they're saying right now it does not appear that Mackenzie was ever in any danger, that she was willingly with this person. He, at this point, is facing an obstruction of justice charge, accused of lying to investigators about where Mackenzie was located and knowing where she was. Do you see this case going anywhere else? Could this person be charged with additional crimes, depending on what comes of the investigation? I want to be clear. They're saying that it doesn't appear that she wasn't with this person willingly.
All right. The only charges that I could see would be if those facts aren't accurate. If at some point she was being held against her will or something like that, that certainly could result in more serious charges. And she is of the age of consent. But she can always, as any woman can, withdraw that consent. And if that contact continues, there could be other more serious charges involved as well. But what we see here is obstructing justice is not a crime to just blow off and say, oh, that's no big deal. I mean, certainly he knew something about someone that was being investigated, and he didn't provide that information to police. But really, the mere fact that he didn't tell about the woman that he was with, the girl that he was with, who, from everything we know, wanted to be with him, and it was not a crime for her to be with him or to have any relationship with him, even that seems to be a bit of a stretch. You're looking for a reason to charge somebody with a crime.
Well, Matt, I know we've covered so many of these cases that didn't end this way. I think we can just both be glad. And I know that Mackenzie Dalton's family is probably very glad, as is law enforcement, that she is safe and that she will be heading home. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Angenette.
And that's it for this episode of Crime Fix. I'm Angenette Levy. Thanks so much for being with me. We'll see you back here next time.